Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruno. Our guest is Dr. Seth Ann Howard, astronomer and author and strong proponent of scientists who are women. Welcome, Seth Ann.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm very excited that you're here because you're the first woman astronomer for me to interview on my show. However, I hear there's a little correction about that terminology.
Yes, of course, because I'm not a woman astronomer. Yes, not at all. I am an astronomer. If you put the gender in front of the word, then you ought to do it for everybody. So you would say man astronomer when you talk about men, and we don't do that, do we?
Right, exactly.
So why should we put woman in front of it? So I'm actually an astronomer who happens to be a woman.
I see.
Yes, astronomer.
Very interesting. And you're correct.
The same with anything, a pilot, a physician. We don't put the gender in front anymore, I hope.
Yeah, no, you're right. We don't. We've even changed certain names. I remember years ago it was stewardess, and now it's flight attendant, so it covers both. And yeah, very interesting. And you're correct. Good. We have to get everybody to turn that around. And I know you had mentioned this to me on the phone, and I've been trying to practice, but we are so used to it.
It's a habit.
Yeah. Bad habit. We'll get women to change that.
Change it around. Yeah.
The world
and
men, exactly. Yes, yeah. So tell me how you got interested in astronomy.
Well, actually, I got interested in astronomy when I was 5 years old. I read a book called Stars. There were the little golden books when I was young. There was one on stars. There was one on the stones, plants, trees, birds. It was a series of little golden books. And I read the book. It made sense to me because they described the constellations, and I could see constellations, and that made sense. But there was one page that had a diagram on it, and a 5-year-old doesn't do well with charts and so I didn't understand it. And I got curious about it, and I stayed curious about it until I figured it out 15 years later.
Oh my goodness,
that's how I got interested in astronomy. Wow. A little golden book on stars.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, it was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Yeah. And then 15 years later, you were in high school by then, or
in high school and early college, and I finally figured out what that chart meant.
And then you had your career.
I had my career
your
goal.
Passion, your goal, your passion in life. Actually,
my passion was ready.
That's exciting. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And then, where did you study science?
I studied science in college, undergraduate school, at the University of California, Davis. I was the first woman to receive a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of California at Davis.
Oh, gosh.
Then I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and got a degree in nuclear physics from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. Then I worked for a while, decided working wasn't much fun, so I went back to school to get a PhD in astrophysics at Georgia State University. I went back to school when I was 42.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I was older.
You've broken a number of barriers, changing the way we speak about scientists who are women, being the first woman who
got a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of California at Davis. Not the first one in the nation or anything like that.
But still, that's a very big deal at University of California. Davis is quite a large school.
Yes, it is now.
That is great.
Yeah.
Exciting. I'm so glad. And then I know you worked at NASA for a while.
I worked at NASA. I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I worked at other places. I worked at Kitt Peak National Observatory in Tucson, Arizona. Then I ended up at the U.S. Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. There I was chief of the Nautical Almanac Office, if you know what that is.
Why don't you tell us a little bit, because...
the Nautical Almanac Office was founded by Congress in the 1840s to produce the almanac, and the almanac was used for celestial navigation for ships. It was vital. Ships couldn't navigate without it because it predicted the position. An almanac traditionally predicts the positions of the moon and planets and stars a year out in the future. Because a ship will need it at sea, and they can't call home and get the position, so they need a book that predicts it for them. And that's the Nautical Almanac. Ships are still required to carry it. It's still lawfully required aboard every military vessel in the United States, and most private vessels carry it as well. And even though we don't do celestial navigation anymore, they're still required to practice it in case there's a failure. Okay. So that was the job of the Nautical Almanac Office, which is located in the U.S. Naval Observatory, which is in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so you came back to us. I'm so glad.
Yeah,
that was great. And also, you were the first woman, weren't you, to hold that position?
Yes, I was. It was held by men from the very beginning, and I was the first one in 2000 who came there.
Gosh, yeah.
And I thought it was exciting. I really loved producing those books. They're difficult to produce. It takes a year to produce a book for the next year.
I see.
It takes a year's worth of calculations to produce a book for a year in the future. So we have a team of people who do nothing but do those computations, and traditionally they were done by women computers.
Women computers.
Women computers.
What do you mean by women computers?
They were called computers, even though this was prior to electronic computers and laptops. They hired women to do the computing.
Oh.
And because women were good at the detailed computations needed, as back in the 1840s, they hired women to do the computations. In the United States, many women mathematicians, and there, see, I did it just there, women mathematicians.
By mathematicians who are women.
Bad habit, mathematicians who are women. Did it, and they hired women all along.
And when we think of mathematicians, we usually think of men. And yet, you're saying the women were the ones who had this facility, who were
they
sharp,
were
and they were the ones that were preferred.
They were preferred. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. That's very wonderful. Gosh. And I know you're collecting data on women in science. Now, when did you start collecting all this data?
I started about 1965 when I gave tours of Lick Observatory, and this Lick Observatory is in California. It's outside of San Jose. It's an astronomical observatory on top of Mount Hamilton.
Oh, I see.
It's open to the public in the daytime, and the public would come up and get tours, and they would ask me, why are you a woman? You know, why are you interested in science? They thought it was strange. And women have always been in astronomy. From the very beginning of written history, women have been in astronomy, and we know that in astronomy because we learn our history. So I knew about them from the very beginning and began collecting them, and then people began giving me names. Then I did a little work and
that's very exciting for us and for future generations. Women and young girls should know more about this because I don't believe we do. I don't remember reading this in school.
It's left out of the history books. They do a bad job on science in general, and they do a poor job on the men, and they do a rotten job on the women.
Oh, that's terrible.
They usually only talk about 2 or 3 men, maybe Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and Einstein. They consider that's coverage of science, and of course it's nowhere near. I mean, that cheats the men as well as the women, and they don't talk about the rare geniuses in women who were scientists as well. So it's left out. It's really too bad.
It is. It is. And we've got to entice more people, excite more young girls. So if they ask for more information, and today on the web there should be more. We've got to get this out there.
Well, I do have a website. My own website hosted at the University of Alabama. So it's an educational website, and it's for young students, and it lists the women I have in my list.
Oh yes, and I've seen your website, and we're going to talk the second half and go over some of the women. I was going to say women astronomers, but actually astronomers from history who are women.
And scientists.
And scientists, yes.
Yeah, it's out of date, that website, unfortunately. I don't get a chance to update it
But
enough.
Still, it's very interesting. Tell us, as long as we're talking about it, you want to give your website for people to go to if they'd like a little bit of education information?
www.astronomy.ua.edu/4000 capital W, capital S. It's case sensitive, unfortunately. So that's it. www.astronomy.ua.edu/4000 capital W capital S.
Okay, good.
Women in Science. 4,000 Women in Science.
Now, 4,000 Women in Science, is that correctly the name of your book, or?
No, the name of my book is called The Hidden Giants, and it's 4,000 years of the history of women in science.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And we go back 4,000 years ago and we find a woman. So
good, and that's what we'll talk about that later, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify and talk a little bit more about the language, because I know, as I said when I was interviewing you on the phone, and I kept saying women scientists, and you said, no, it should be more correctly scientists who are women, because scientist has no gender. And we mentioned it a little bit with astronomy. So you're saying not only astronomers have no gender, but the word scientists.
The results of science have no gender. That's the phrase. The results of science have no gender.
I see.
You cannot back out of a scientific result whether it was done by a man or a woman. And I think that's rather special. You know, the results have no gender.
That's right.
It's not a male field.
And what makes them correct and accepted through the ages is the fact that they're repeatable.
They're repeatable, they're testable, they give the right answer, they predict things correctly. If they don't, we throw it away and start over again.
So no one can say to you or to anyone, we can't accept this result because it was done by a woman.
That's correct.
Results have no gender.
Results have no gender.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you. I'm learning a lot. And I want to turn to some questions from your book. I think my first one is, how long have women been active scientists?
Women have, do you want to see the book?
Oh, yes.
I have it here.
Realize. Okay,
yeah.
We'll put it up.
It's called The Hidden Giants.
Hidden Giants. Okay, great. Thank you.
Because Isaac Newton said, "If I can see further than other men have seen, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants." And if he said that, I'm seeking out the hidden giants, the women.
See.
So that's the source of the name, the Hidden Giants. And it's the story of 4,000 years of women in science.
Great.
So
thank you. So I know you're saying there's quite a few women that you had, but then some of them are missing.
Yes, how many women are missing from the record?
Yes.
We have no idea, because the historians didn't write their names down. They didn't record it. A lot of the information that's recorded, they record the result and not who did it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Especially, for example, the country of China. If you look for technical people in ancient China, they considered that manual labor. And they wouldn't record the name of the inventor or the technical person because they considered that not worthy of recording the name. So they invented many great things, the Chinese, but we don't know who did it. And so we know there are women missing from the record, men too. But
because their technical was not considered prestigious or worthy.
Prestigious enough
to record. Interesting. Yes. Okay. We'll finish a few more questions and then discuss 4 specific women in our second half. We're going to break for a short public service announcement.
Kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Welcome back to It's a Woman's World. We're interviewing astronomer Dr. Seth Ann Howard about scientists who are women.
Hi.
Hi again. Welcome back. And I think the first thing I want to ask you, we've talked a lot about astronomy and scientists who are women, but tell me, please, your definition of science.
Well, science is a wonderful adventure. That's what I think it is an adventure. But there is a poem that I found that describes for me what science is. If you don't mind, I will read it because I don't have it committed to memory, unfortunately.
Oh, that's fabulous.
It's by Nina Cassian, who is the national poet of Romania. and she's still alive. I found her on email and emailed her to ask for permission to use her poem, and she must be in her late 90s by now. She was born in 1924 or early 90s, and she said, yes, certainly. How did you hear about my poem? So this is her poem. She didn't write it about science.
Oh.
I've stitched my dress with continents, bound the equator round my waist. I waltz to a steady rhythm, bending slightly. I can't stop my arms plunging into galaxies, gloved to elbows in adhesive gold. I carry on my arms a star's vaccine. With such greedy sight, my eyelids flutter in the breeze like a strange, enthusiastic plant. No one fears me except error, who is everywhere.
Wow.
And I think that to me describes what a scientist is and what science is.
My goodness.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful poem.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly is. Now, what did she write it about, though?
I don't know.
You don't know. Oh, I see.
found it in a book of poems.
I see.
And grabbed onto it. And
for you, it encapsulates what you feel.
What I feel
science
is. Yes.
That's marvelous. It's just lovely. Yeah. And now I'd like to talk about, I want you to introduce us to your early astronomers and scientists who are women through history and through your books. And I think we wanted to start with the early. We're going to try to cover 4 if we can. And I'd like to start with the earliest one, a Sumerian astronomer princess. And you said her name
Priestess.
is? Ah, priestess. Okay.
Astronomer priestess.
Priestess. Okay, great. Thank you. And
yes.
Enheduanna.
Yes, if that's how we pronounce her name. I really don't speak ancient Sumerian. She was the chief astronomer priestess of the city of Ur, U-R, which is south of current Babylon in Iraq, modern-day Iraq. It's been excavated, and they found out where she lived. We have an alabaster disc that shows her in procession. We have 42 of her poems in English translation today. She is called the Shakespeare of ancient history because her poems and works were quoted for 500 years. She was a scientist because she observed the comings and goings of the moon and stars to develop the calendar. And the Babylonian and Sumerian calendar is the basis for our religious calendars today. So we still use the work developed by these women, the astronomer priestesses. They ran the temples, they ran the agricultural system, they ran the financial systems of the cities they were chief astronomer priestesses of. So they had a lot of power. So they were pretty special people. And she lived 2334 BCE, so 4,300 years ago.
I see. Wow.
And that she's real, and she's the first person whose name we know who wrote. So she's called the world's first poet. Now, they wrote on tablets in those days, clay tablets.
Yes. Okay.
So if you're my age, you think of Charlton Heston coming down from the Ten Commandments carrying these big tablets that he crashes to the ground. And of course, a tablet doesn't look like that at all. They got it wrong, unfortunately.
Oh.
I brought one with me.
Oh, please show. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this is a tablet. It isn't the one of hers. They wouldn't give it to me in the museum. They showed it to me, but they wouldn't let me have it.
Now, where did you get this tablet?
I got it from the museum, but it's the world's first medical prescription tablet. It's got medical prescriptions on it by Dr. Lulu. I don't know who Dr. Lulu was, but Dr. Lulu, this was the prescription tablet for Dr. Lulu.
I see.
And it has about 14 different solutions to medical problems on here. And they wrote on both sides.
Oh, look. Yes.
It's not clear.
Tiny, tiny writing, isn't it?
Tiny, tiny writing. This is cuneiform. But if you notice, I don't know if you can see, there's a rectangle here, a clear rectangle.
Yes, I do see that.
That was put on these discs as their catalog system. It would say, this is tablet 1 lines 1 to 1,000. This is tablet 2. And that's the way the librarians would keep track of the tablets. So they used the library catalog system just like we do today.
Oh my
and it
goodness.
was put in this little, that's why it's blank, because he only had, the doctor only had one.
I see. Oh, I see.
Dr.
Yeah,
Lulu only
yeah,
used this
yeah.
one.
They had their own Dewey Decimal System.
They had their own Dewey Decimal System.
and actually their own back jacket, or what is it, the binding at the back
binding,
that
yeah.
has usually the Dewey Decimal System
That's
number.
true.
And they have it clear.
They have it clear, and they did
That's
it on both
amazing.
sides. So, and this is the size. It's
Oh,
good
that.
to fit in their pockets, or however they would carry it. It's not
I
a
see.
big,
Oh,
thin thing.
it's not Charlton Heston size.
Right. It's not Charlton Heston size. So that's a.
Now, is it heavy? I know it's very fragile.
can-
I don't want to hold.
You don't want to hold it.
Well,
it's pretty heavy.
unless you want me to try, I wouldn't mind just. Is that okay? Oh, it is heavy.
It's heavy.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And it's made out of
Clay.
Clay.
Baked clay.
Baked clay. Okay. Oh, it's marvelous. And tiny, tiny inscriptions.
Tiny,
Now, how did they?
done with a
Let
stylus.
me give it back to you.
A reed stylus. They would take the clay when it was damp and press down with the reed stylus the scribes.
I see.
There were both men and female scribes.
Okay. Oh, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Things that
Yeah.
I've never heard of or seen
So
before.
I think
Yeah.
that's neat.
Oh, she's
Just
a
to
very.
know what they look like. And she wrote her poem on one like that.
I see.
Her poems. And I've seen the disc, the tablet
Yeah.
in the University Museum in Philadelphia. That's where
Oh.
it's located.
Oh.
And the curator of the tablets showed me her tablet and tossed it to me through the air.
Oh no.
And I thought, this is 4,000 years of something I can break right here. But we didn't break it, thank
Yeah.
goodness.
Oh, thank goodness. Now,
Yes.
how old is yours? The one that you just showed now.
The same.
It's 4,000 years. I just held something that was 4,000 years old. My goodness, that is unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat.
Oh, I'm so excited that you have it. Gosh. Let's go from Nen Edwana to the second woman we were going to discuss. I'm trying to find out.
Hypatia.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because I could not seem to say her name.
Americans don't pronounce it Hypatia, Hypatia. She was Greek. So in Greek, it's pronounced Hypatia,
Okay.
not Hypatia, which is how